G'day, ZiggyD here, and in this video I want to share with you guys some of my first impressions of number 2 of The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing.
My name is Van Helsing, and I'm a monster hunter.
Fire! Oh shit, there's a big pack. Time for flamethrower. Oh, they got wrecked! This released a day or two ago, and I picked it up on Steam. I did play the first Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing, an action RPG from an indie developer that kind of just came out of nowhere, and the game actually ended up being really rad. It was kind of like a one and done sort of thing, like play through it once, and then you're kind of done. It had a bit of replayability to it, and it had some really interesting systems that kind of captured my imagination and made me really enjoy it, and I got my $15 worth out of it. So when this one dropped, and since I've been hearing that number 1 had been patched and updated and upgraded in a few ways, and since in number 2 they were working on expanding some of the features I really liked in number 1, I thought this is a natural thing, I'll just jump on Steam and pick it up. And I streamed it for about 6 hours today and had a pretty good time with it actually. It has done exactly what they said they were doing, which is expanding on some of the features that made the original really good and excited me about the original version. So essentially it is an action RPG like Diablo or Path of Exile or Torchlight or Grim Dawn or any of those sorts of games. I kind of rate it more similar to Grim Dawn or Torchlight than to Diablo or Path of Exile. It has offline single player with an optional multiplayer online mode, and since it costs $15, it's kind of one of those games you buy and then play through a couple times. However, the game actually seems to have pretty good replayability. I have played 2 characters today because I played hardcore on hard difficulty, and yes, I died twice on both of those characters. The game is actually pretty challenging. But through this, I discovered that there's actually a pretty good amount of replayability to the game this time around. The first time through, in the first zone, there's kind of this defend your home base from enemies that are invading and stuff like that. This is different to the later side quests of tower defense. It's actually kind of like a defense thing. There's a bunch of different quests you can go around and do. You can order soldiers to defend a certain areas, and you help them defend against waves of enemy forces, and eventually an enemy robot boss. Now, the first time I did this, I basically just told the soldiers to, figure it out. You figure out the soldiers, I'm just going to go fight stuff. And that's what I did with my character. I took my engineer out there, I used my flamethrower and burnt down some dudes, and it went pretty well. However, after that character died a little bit later in the game, I came back and I re-rolled a new character. I re-rolled a Thaumaturge, one of the new classes, and I discovered that I went a different route this time. I thought, okay, this time I'll take a more tactical approach, and I said I'll go around and give each of the different soldier groups orders on what to do. Retreat to the second line of defense and guard the positions there. I think I'm going to pull everyone back to the second line of defense. So I ran around to each one. I was like, you guys hang out here, hold this position, or you guys retreat back to the earlier position, or you guys reinforce this area with turrets or something like that. And I handed out a bunch of these different orders. And this led to a bunch of other side quests where I had to help them with their defenses. So shutting down like a robot production facilities that was going to be involved in the attack, causing an explosion that would seal off an area, and all this other cool stuff. And I thought, this is like widely different, and the actual defense actually went better as a result of me taking a more involved role. And because I did that, I actually got to see this giant robot boss. The first time I played through, I saw this robot boss coming out in the little cutscene. I thought, oh cool, I want to fight that. But our defenses failed, and they breached us, and we had to retreat early, so I never got to actually see that fight. And then in the second time through, the defenses held, because they went much better, did a much better job of keeping things together, and I eventually got to go and finish off that giant robot boss, which was actually almost killed by my defending soldiers. So that was really cool. I can expect that there's more decisions like this in the game, and I've encountered quite a few quests just in my couple hours of playtime where you actually make these decisions based on what your character says to people or what you decide to do. And there's a lot of depth to the game like this. Like later on, there's these quests you can do where you send a certain hero to deal with a certain side quest. You don't actually do it yourself. You send another hero from your faction to go and do this quest, and you give him soldiers. You can upgrade the soldiers, train the soldier, and you pick the hero depending on their approaches. Like one's more stealthy, one's more scientific, one's more heroic, and you pick the one that you think will be better suited to the situation. And you can get clues from them, you can talk to them, and then do this whole tactical side of things. And it's really cool. Like all these different systems really blow my mind at how cool all of this is. And then, on top of that, there's like this tower defense minigame. Now, this was featured in the first game, but it was pretty brief. People really responded well to it, so the developers listened to this, and they said, we're going to expand on this. So even, I've only just played one of the instances of this so far, like the first mission of this tower defense system, but it already feels much more in-depth and interesting, so I'm really looking forward to uncovering more of that. So a lot of these really cool systems have been expanded upon, and extra things added. On top of that, the itemization has gotten a little bit more interesting, I think. There's like this Diablo 3 style mystic crafting, enchanting system, and then there's the essences and stuff like that, that you can socket in gear, just like the first one, but they seem to have just taken little extensions upon each of these things. So the fact that they've taken this Van Helsing thing and decided we're gonna do these pretty decent sized games, but have them be chapters continuing the same storyline, is a pretty different and interesting approach to an action RPG. It works pretty well, because it does give them that time to expand upon each of these systems. Now, if you played Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing 1, you can take your character from 1 and continue on through, I believe. There's this veteran mode where you start off at level 30 and continue on. Otherwise, you can start off with a level 30 character and just build your character however you like. So there's a few decisions there, and to extend upon these sorts of options, in addition to the general hunter class that we had last time, there's now a thaumaturge class and like an engineer science type style class, and I've played both of those two separate classes today, and they have completely different skill trees with a lot of different skills, play styles, and even gear. So there's actually specific gear that drops for each class now, which just really adding a lot of extra complexity and depth to the game. The skill system seems to have been improved as well. Van Helsing features a very unique style of skill modification system. It is pretty complex, but it results in eventually being pretty simplistic to actually play. Like, there's a lot of planning that goes into what you actually set up, but the actual execution ends up being pretty simple, usually just pressing spacebar and clicking. But what it is that you pick a couple of skills, and then you pick skill modifiers, and then you spend your rage that your character gains by killing enemies to modify those skills in certain ways. So you could increase the damage of your fire, or you could give it a fear effect so enemies run away when you use it. But generally, you'll just set up a combo of these different modifiers, something you find works pretty well, and then you'll just hit spacebar to automatically set this rage and then use it. So it ends up being pretty simplistic, but it's still an interesting and somewhat satisfying system. I've discovered some of the spells are really interesting too. I'm using this firewall skill, which you actually draw on the ground how you want the firewall spell to work. So I can draw like a straight line if I want, or I can draw a Z shape. But there's like the passive skills, the auras, and then like these perks that you get and you have to unlock by doing specific things in game that make it all really interesting. And there's so many different ways to build characters. So the complexity and the depth and all of these different things you can get into with this game is what really makes me rave about it. It's also a pretty good looking game. It's nothing that blows you away, but the art direction is nice. There's kind of these steampunk elements. The UI is very cool looking, and the actual graphical fidelity is decent enough. It's quite passable. Soundscape sounds pretty decent. But nothing too mind-bending as well. It's not quite on the level of Diablo 3 polish, but honestly, sometimes it can look a bit smoother than something like Path of Exile or Grim Dawn, so I do rate it pretty highly. Now, my one gripe with the game, my one serious gripe with the game, is that there seems to be some difficulty balancing issues. I've heard other people talking about this, and I even saw Koparian put out a video earlier, and I was thinking, I don't really know. Is he just kind of, because he played a very hard difficulty, was it too hard? But actually, after playing the game myself and being one-shot twice, I do think there are some difficulty balancing issues where there are... it's not, in action RPGs, there's always going to be things you don't know about that will kill you. That's fine. That's a good thing for action RPGs, I think. It rewards learning about these game mechanics and building characters properly. But it seems like there are some pretty cheap deaths in there at the moment that might need rebalancing. Oh! What? I just got gibbed. I was only playing on hard difficulty. There are like 2 extra difficulties above that make it even harder, and I was playing on hardcore, so when one of these things does happen, like I think my first death was something just like there was a spellcaster kind of at the edge of screen, or maybe even off screen, just use a spell and I died. I didn't really even... Each time I died, I kind of didn't really actually know what killed me. There wasn't really much of a lesson learned there, which is not the best sign of difficulty in action RPGs, I think. When I play something like Path of Exile, every time I die, I learn a really good lesson. But in this, I was just kind of left scratching my head. So I don't know, that's the sort of thing that can be patched over time, and the game is still very enjoyable, but maybe not as enjoyable to play on hardcore as other action RPGs I've played, at least so far. We'll see as I get a bit more into it, and I might keep you guys up to date with my review as we continue playing. But I have enjoyed it. It costs $15-ish on Steam, as the original did. The original was worth the money, and I do think the sequel will be worth the money as well, especially if they did what they did with the first game, and patch it and add things to it, and improve things like the difficulty balance over time. And because they plan on adding extra chapters, I'm pretty sure they're going to be doing more chapters of the game after this. I think it's probably a pretty good series to get on, so maybe consider checking out the first game if you haven't already, and if you got the first game and enjoyed it, maybe consider checking out the second one as well. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.